Welcome to the Man Up, Man Down podcast, presented by Volker Beluda and David Pawsey. We discuss the pressures and challenges faced by men approaching middle age that we're often too embarrassed to speak about with our friends. You can find us online at www.manupdown.com. Enjoy the show and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
Brilliant. Well, welcome to another episode of Man Up, Man Down. This is another special one for me because I've been following Chip for many years, actually, if you believe it or not. But we will dive into that as we go along. So
Oh, you're that stalker. You're the stalker I've been having to call
yeah,
security
exactly.
detail.
So now I need to talk about it before I introduce you. But yeah, it's the Elder Academy that really caught my eyes. If I say 10, 15 years ago, I don't know when it started, but it feels like that kind of amount of time.
Seven and a half. Yep.
Yeah. So because it was all about starting after midlife, having a second life, literally. People think you're kind of done at some point. But let's dive into that after the intro. So let me introduce Chip Conley formally. So Chip is a hospitality industry maverick, New York Times bestselling author and midlife activist. His recent book, Learning to Love Midlife, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age, has been featured on Good Morning America, The Today Show, and the New York Times. So he will join us to talk about the unexpected pleasures of aging and why he created the world's first midlife wisdom school, MEA, with campuses in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Baja, I hope I pronounced that correctly, in Mexico. So Chip, officially, welcome to the podcast. We already started. That's great.
Yeah, Baja is Baja, but that's good enough. And Santa Fe,
okay,
yes.
There we go.
So, both in North America, Mexico, and in the States. So it's great to be with you. I'm honored and look forward to having this conversation.
Yeah. So let's start with the Elder Academy, because if I say that's how I know you. That's still going, I suppose.
Oh yeah. We started in. So long story short is I was a boutique hotelier, created the second largest boutique hotel company in the U.S. called Joie de Vivre, and created 52 boutique hotels in around California. And then after I sold the business, and it's a Hyatt brand now, I was asked by the founders of Airbnb to come in and be their modern elder. And I said, like, what do you mean a modern elder? And they said, listen, you're twice the age of the average person here, but you're as curious as you are wise. And that's what makes you different than a traditional elder. You're like, you want to learn, you're curious. And I was like, oh, that's true. And so I spent 7.5 years taking that little tech startup and with mentoring the three founders, and Brian in particular, the CEO, helped Airbnb become the world's most valuable hospitality company. That while I was doing that, I started working on a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. And that's what really led to the idea of the Modern Elder Academy, MEA, the world's first midlife wisdom school. And MEA is really dedicated to helping people in midlife, often in their 50s, but we have a lot of people in their 40s and 60s as well, to reimagine and repurpose themselves while navigating the transitions that are sort of normal in midlife, but can be painful. And then learning how to cultivate our wisdom and reframe our relationship with getting older, as well as look at what can help enhance longevity. So that's what we do. We have about 7,000 graduates now from 60 countries, and we have 58 regional chapters around the world and 2 campuses.
Wow, that's a lot. So what do you teach then when you say people graduate?
So I'm teaching this week, in fact, with a gentleman named Michael Franti, a musician, famous musician. And what we teach varies from week to week, but the basic principles are, number one, understanding how to enhance your TQ, your transition intelligence, will both make you happier and more successful in life. So what's the anatomy of a transition? How do you effectively create a transition for yourself personally, but also for maybe an organization? How do you cultivate purpose? really important, especially in the second half of one's life. For many people who get closer to retirement age, one of the biggest challenges they have is they no longer feel like there's a reason to get up in the morning. And this is, this can lead to a lot of problems. So cultivating purpose is a big piece of it. So we teach people how to understand how to find their purpose, um, how to how to shift and reframe the idea of getting older such that it's about maximizing some of your wisdom. And that's that piece of like, how do you help people understand what they've learned along the way? Because our painful life lessons are the raw material for our future wisdom. And so we help with wisdom management practices as well. All of this is
Sorry,
done.
I've got to say I love that. Our painful experiences. Sorry, what can you repeat the phrase?
Our
Our painful
painful life
experiences.
lessons our painful life lessons are the raw material for our future wisdom. So in essence,
Awesome. Thank you.
if we can metabolize the experiences we're having, make sense of them such that we can say like, okay, now that I've learned that, and often in a painful way, the school of hard knocks, um, how do I use that in the future? And then how do I share it? Because unlike being savvy or smart, being wise is a social good. It's meant to be shared. So we're the world. Yeah, like I said, we're the world's first midlife wisdom school. And I love that. I love that people come, especially leaders and lots of companies now come, because we've gotten really good over the past 70 years, 60 years of knowledge management practices, knowledge workers. But in the era of AI, my God, I mean, like knowledge workers are a dime a dozen. They're not really valuable as like they used to be because everybody has knowledge accessible to them. So what if in fact we're moving into the era of the wisdom worker, not the knowledge worker? And the wisdom worker is not always the older person, because I know a lot of people who are 70 years old who are not as wise as a 30-year-old, because the 30-year-old is much better at making sense of what they learned along the way. And the 70-year-old keeps making the same damn mistake over and over again.
David,
So, I mean, there's a lot to take in there. I mean, is your core sort of membership in the US? I mean, you've obviously mentioned that it is an international and you've got chapters in lots of different countries. I mean, was the main growth in the US, and it sort of permeated from there, or when you launched it, did you find that actually there was a lot of interest from all over the globe?
Our first campus was where I had a second home in Mexico on the beach. 1 hour north of a place called Cabo San Lucas, and also known as Southern Baja. And so literally I built a campus around my home, on the beach, 4.5 acres on the beach. And that's how we got started. And that became popular. And so we just grew and grew and grew there. And then when COVID came along, we just knew that our biggest market of people who came to visit us were people from the US. So we figured that we should find a campus in the US, and we found a 2,600-acre regenerative horse ranch. And that's where our second campus is, where we have 2 retreat centers on that campus, which is where I am right now. Um, so the US is our bigger operation than the Mexico operation, but, you know, um, about 75% of the people who come to MEA are from the US, about 12% are Canadian, about 9% are European, with the UK being the number 1 place for, that people come from. We have a full European chapter, that's very, very active, and we do little pop-up retreats and workshops in other locations occasionally, and we're working on one for Europe in 2026.
So is it mainly, I mean, obviously, you've talked about these what sound like incredible campuses, but is it sort of online as well?
Yeah,
Or,
we do have online. We have online. COVID taught us that we better have online.
yeah.
And so we have online courses all the time, on some of our key pillars: transitions, purpose, reframing retirement. We had a midlife mastery summit last month. We had a emerging elders summit last week. So we do a lot of online programs because that actually helps us, especially in the international audience. who don't feel like they can travel as far as coming to North America. And it's less expensive too. So to do an online course, it's not the same, but it's still really good. I mean, it's not your normal Zoom experience, meaning it's sort of boring and you feel it's easy to disengage. It's the woman who runs it for us. One of our partners is named Carrie Cardinale, and we call her the digital intimacy queen. Um, she knows how create digital intimacy. People, and don't take that the wrong way, but boys, she knows how to create a sense of connection between people, even if all we have is a screen as opposed to being in person.
Right. Amazing. I mean, there's so much in there, right? And let's talk about your book maybe, because I think it goes very much in line what you're doing with the Modern Elder Academy, right?
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I love writing books. I love writing, and so the last couple, I mentioned the book Wisdom at Work: The Making of a Modern Elder, which really talks about my time mentoring the founders of Airbnb and what I learned about intergenerational collaboration. And I gave a TED talk on that topic that came out in 2018 as well. And then the more recent book is called Learning to Love Midlife: 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age. And I gave a TED talk on that too. It was a shorter one. It was just 3 minutes, but it was on the big TED stage. And that book is really helps people to understand about what gets better as we get older. Because one of the challenges with midlife is if you believe that aging is terrible, and most of us do. I mean, that's sort of the basic premise of the societal mindset is, aging is like it's the opposite of Nike. Instead of just do it, just don't do it when it comes to aging. But the truth is, aging is something that happens, and the question is, how do you do it effectively in a healthy way? But also, how do you focus on not just the things that get worse with age, like your body often and your short-term memory, but what gets better with age? And a lot of people don't know these things, like your emotional intelligence grows with age. Your capacity to be a good friend grows with age. The desires you have to have strong relationships grows with age. Your wisdom, what's known as crystallized intelligence, grows with age. Your ability to edit and know what you don't want in your life gets better with age. Um, your ability to get off the success treadmill that isn't your treadmill, it's your parents' treadmill, or it's your spouse's treadmill, it's someone else's treadmill, it's someone else's script that you're reading. That gets better with age. You get clear on who you are and what you want. You actually you start getting some time affluence, meaning you have some time back in your life. You get more spiritually curious as you get older, and you also learn how to sort of take the disparate parts of yourself, the introvert and the extrovert, and you put them together. And the curious and the wise, the gravitas, depth and levity, laughter, and you grow whole. So basically the book's based upon social science research, but also based upon the fact that I have been in the classroom for over 7 years now, teaching people on average age 54 about their second adulthood. Their first adulthood goes from 18 to 54, and their second adulthood may go from 54 to 90. And so how we understand the first adulthood, and there's a lot, but the second adulthood we don't understand all that well, partly because longevity is a very modern phenomena, and we've added 30 years of additional life in the last century. So we're still building the roadmap for what a second adulthood looks like.
You mentioned there about sort of purpose and also sort of living someone else's script. I mean, is that sort of something that, I mean, do you have people that come that are suddenly like, wow, I've just realized that I've been fighting against my purpose for so long? It sounds like it can be like quite revelatory and emotional. I mean,
It
do
can.
you kind of get lots of different reactions?
Yeah, I mean, rarely does someone leave the 5-day workshop early because it just blew their mind too much and they just can't handle it. Um, when you're in a when you're in a workshop cohort with usually about 20 to 25 people, and everybody is going through this process of having some level of revelation around how they want to curate their life differently, or a story in their head that has been holding them back, a mindset, a fixed mindset, like I'm too old to start a business, or I'm too old to meet my soulmate, or whatever it is. Um, people people get to a place of like, oh wow. But then you're also in a cohort of people doing that together. The thing that's really interesting is adolescence as a word didn't exist until 1904. Prior to that, you were an adult as soon as you hit puberty. And so when adolescence got concepted as an idea and people started to see, oh, the teen years are in between, childhood and adulthood. They're a liminal period, transitional period. Then all of a sudden we gave a lot of love and care to adolescents and people and schools and college counselors and, sports teams, etc. So people have sort of a crucible, a social infrastructure to support them during what's a difficult era, as evidenced by the Netflix series Adolescence. It's not an easy time these days, as you guys know. But having said that, middlescence, which is the middle of your life, when you're like adolescence, you're going through hormonal, emotional, physical, and identity transitions. The same thing happens in middlescence, often in one's 50s. Women, it's most noticeable for women with menopause, but men go through andropause. There's lots of stuff going on there, but we have no social infrastructure, zero social infrastructure to support people and to help people to say like, oh, this is what I'm going through, etc. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have therapy and coaches, but therapy and coaches is one-on-one work. How do you bring it together? And especially for men. I mean, for women, it's like, okay, women are willing to be vulnerable and they have their best friend and they're telling their best friend everything. And for men, it's a different story. I mean, we're not brought up that way. And so for a lot of men, I mean, part of the reason that the suicide rate for men is 4 to 5 times higher than for women is because they feel at that age, and the suicide rate is at its peak around that adolescence time in 40s and 50s. Um, they feel like their life hasn't turned out the way they hoped it would. They feel inferior or incompetent, maybe a lack of confidence, maybe irrelevant. And they don't have anybody to talk to about it. And in fact, for a lot of men, their friendships atrophy in their 20s, 30s, and 40s as they're very busy. Women keep those friendships partly because that's how they're built. Women are built to be more social animals. Men are more rugged individualists. I mean, I'm sorry that all of this is very generalized, but it is also based upon social science research. Um, and so a man wakes up at age 50 and they're like, "What the fuck am I doing? And who am I?" And I lost 5 male friends to suicide, between 2008 and 2010. They were ages 42 to 52. Um, so I know what I'm talking about because I mean, I've personally experienced it. And I had, in my late 40s, I struggled and I had some suicide ideation myself. I'm 64 now. So this is a while ago, but I understand what it feels like to want to escape or to feel somehow like you're cursed. And,
Mm.
the lowest point is usually 45 to 50. I'm sorry to say, you guys. I don't know how old you are, but
Right in the middle of that
Right
age.
in the middle, yeah.
Yeah.
48.
okay.
But unfortunately, you're right? I mean, men don't talk about things, right? We bottle up, and of course, it's a generalization, right? But we get to this stage in our lives, and I work with a lot of men in therapy and coaching, where they get to this midlife stage, and they go like, "What am I doing here, right? What is the success that my parents or whoever gave me, on my journey? What does it actually mean? And is that something I want to do? And what does the rest of my life, what I'm going to do with the rest of my life?" So when did this revelation came for you? Was that when you started at Airbnb, or was that before?
So, I mean, Volker, what really happened for me in my late 40s, everything that could go wrong went wrong in my life. And I didn't really know who to turn to. Fortunately, I had a female friend who's a coach, and she really helped me through that time in my late 40s. And I had an NDE also. I had a near-death experience where I had an allergic reaction to an antibiotic. And after giving a speech on stage, I died. Fortunately, I went unconscious while I was sitting down signing books. Um, but when you have that kind of experience at age 47, it wakes you up to saying, like, what's important in your life? And I really had to change everything. And unfortunately, I had a coach who was a best friend who helped me, but it was a hard time. And then I got to the other side, and it was like at age 50, I had the freedom to say, okay, how do I want to curate my life differently? And there's a woman named Mary Catherine Bateson. Her mother was Margaret Mead, and she came up with a term called the midlife atrium. And she says that we tend to think of if we thought of our lives like a home, we have additional longevity. It's like we've added an additional bedroom or two in the backyard of life, as if we're old longer. And she says that's not true. She says what you should really think about is you creating a midlife atrium. So there's not this extra time at the end of your life. It's like extra time in the middle of your life. And if you have a midlife atrium, it creates light and air and space around age 50 to imagine how you want to live your life differently. So I had a couple of years between 50 and 52 to do that. And I was working on a bunch of things. So it was not like I was just sitting in a hammock and reading books and drinking a margarita. I was doing things, but I did have some space to be curious. And then at 52, I was asked by the founders of Airbnb to join them. And what I found was that, like, wow, in my 50s, I loved my 50s. And I didn't expect that. I sort of felt like, oh shit, I basically got to the other side of my 40s, and now I'm getting close to the finish line. But there's this thing called the U curve of happiness. It's a social science research that's global that shows that our life satisfaction tends to decline, in our early adulthood and bottoms out around 45 to 50. And then with each decade after age 50, we get happier and happier. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I write about that in my book, Learning to Love Midlife. Um, but I would just say, bottom line is, I've come to realize that we as a society don't understand the upside of being 50 years old and older. And what I really wanted to do is show that. I'm not saying that there aren't difficulties after age 50. There's a bunch of them. People die. Your body starts to wear out. New diseases come along. I have stage 3 cancer. I didn't get that till age 57. And I've been living with it for 7 years now. But even in spite of the bad circumstances we have in our life, there's a bunch of things that get better and our perspective on things gets better. And so, I want people to know this because I don't want I lost 5 friends to suicide, all of them men. All of that time where they were going through the bottom of their U curve of happiness, thinking that on the other side of this, it's not gonna be better. And, I've seen, I mean, the data from the social science researchers is clear, but I've also seen the in-person experience with 7,000 graduates. So, you know, I have become a midlife activist. I didn't think that would ever happen.
Hello, folks. It's Volker here. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As you know, I coach executives, whether that is for leadership skills, or sales leadership skills, or working as a therapist too. There are few ways I can help you to get unstuck, improve your work-life balance, or become a better version of yourself. So you will be more productive and have more time for your family. Whatever it is, you can join my client list of people from General Electric, Pepsi, DHL, Boots, and many others. Book a free exploratory call via my website, www.obnat.us. That's OBNAT.us. Now back to the show.
Just wanted to sort of talk, not talk specifically about Airbnb and you working there. But I mean, sort of, you sort of touched on the themes that basically drag us down at this age, and and I think sort of technology, and it's something that me and Volker have talked about on the podcast. It's for me, it's almost like I get overwhelmed by technology, and it's like, well, the only way I can stay relevant is to keep up with this technology. But then it's like, well, actually, I guess it's like, well, that's sort of the tactical side almost, the strategy or how you deploy those tools. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's and I sort of see this in the workplace that you can, and you sort of talked about, you sort of a young hotshot will come in the office and you're like, oh God, that's put me even more on the scrap heap. But then you're kind of like, oh, wait a minute. He's just made quite a naive comment. And, it's actually, I have got this knowledge and, this wisdom, as you've put it. I mean, do you think we are at a bit of an inflection point where we're almost trying to kind of, well, it's like, well, we've got our elders here that have got all this wisdom. We've got our tech and, and young people that have grown up with it. I mean, yeah, I just feel that we're sort of at a very sort of interesting sort of point in terms of, well, industrial revolution. I don't know if that's probably the right phrase, but, we do seem to be at like one of these major sort of points in history for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of how tech and experience marries together is something that I get quite obsessed with.
Yeah, just a few thoughts on that. One of my key lessons at Airbnb, I had over 100 mentees, all of them younger than me. And initially, some of them came to me purely because they wanted to learn from me. But I realized very quickly that I could learn from them too. So I call it mutual mentorship. It's like a reciprocity. I had EQ, emotional intelligence, and they had DQ, digital intelligence, and we were both better off for that. There are 5 generations in the workplace for the very first time. We've never had this before. And in the United States, by the year 2027, the majority of Americans will have a younger boss. Now, we've never seen that either. I mean, the majority of people in America are going to have a younger boss within 2 years from now. So we better understand this intergenerational collaboration because we have a lot more generations in the workplace. But just because technology is so powerful, and it is, doesn't mean that younger people who are what we call digital natives as opposed to digital immigrants, they grew up with this. They're natives. They grew up with the technology, and because they grew up with the technology, and this is true for the both of you compared to me, but it's true for the people 15 years younger than you, that they know they're more native to the technology. That means it's easier for them. That doesn't mean that we, as we get older, can't learn new technologies. Of course we can. It doesn't mean sometimes people who are older are really good at that. But it also means that you need someone else to help with the strategy piece of it. You said it, David. Um, when I was at Airbnb, they didn't hire me to be a software developer. They hired me to be a soft skills developer. And the soft skills developer is someone who helps these younger technologists learn how to manage a team or how to create a culture on a team or in a company or how to define priorities and systems to help see if we're on path, um, or how to go out and do sales and marketing of a business that's a disruptor that the world may hate. How do you build so a lot of the things that I was helpful with, and frankly, Airbnb was disrupting my industry, the industry I'd been in
I was
for,
going to say that must have been quite an interesting dynamic.
yeah, it
Like,
was.
kind of.
What was helpful for them was I understood the landscape of the industry they were disrupting. They did not understand the landscape at all. So I understood the landscape. That helped. But yes, I had, what psychologists called cognitive dissonance at times because I still, while I had sold the management company and brand, I still owned a bunch of hotels, the real estate. And so here I am, a hotelier, going to the dark side like Darth Vader in Star Wars. And I'm like, but when I first joined Airbnb, it was not like that. Everybody looked at me like, oh my God, Chip, you're going to ruin your reputation by going to work for this startup that is just never going to go anywhere. It's a terrible
What was the
idea.
name of that startup again?
It was called Airbnb. And in reality, is it became the most valuable hospitality company in the world. And so, years later, all these people were telling me I was an idiot, were sending me their resumes and saying, hey, I want a job with that company. Uh, so long story short is, the back to your point, David, this idea that I had something to bring to the table, and so did they, the younger people. What it takes to make it work, because there's going to be skeptics listening to this, like, well, Chip, you were lucky because they came to you. If I went, Chip, if I was 52 and I went to them to try to get a job, they might look at me like I was like some, dinosaur. And that is true. I was lucky. But what I can say is that if you show up with curiosity and a passionate engagement for what you do, people don't notice your wrinkles as much as they notice your energy. And that energy, the ability to have, to be against type, you think of somebody in their 50s as maybe slowing down and being fixed mindset, not being very curious, not wanting to learn something new. Um, Telling the younger people this is the way the world works. I was none of those things. I didn't fit that profile. And I think if you try to if you do fit that profile and you go with that with younger people, they are going to think that you're their father or mother if you're a woman.
Yeah.
And the moment these younger people think that you're their father, they will revolt and they will not listen to you. So what I talk about in my book, Wisdom at Work, is what are the 4 steps to being a successful modern elder? And the first step is not telling younger people how the world works. That's the 4th step. That's what you do once you've gotten the credibility and respect. So a lot of it comes back to respect. It has to go in both directions. Yeah. I mean, if you're an older person trying to get a job, a middle-aged person trying to get a job in a fast-growing tech startup where the average age is, 20 years younger than you, and they're just not giving you the time of day at all, then, that's not the right habitat. But I will say that more and more investors and venture capitalists have seen the model that we had at Airbnb and say, okay, we need more like that. We need, and it's not just, I mean, coaches are helpful. And so I want to speak to the idea. Coaches can be very helpful, a middle-aged coach or an older coach. But in my case, I was a full-time in the weeds, flying around the world executive helping to run the company and much older. But I wasn't the CEO. And that was the key. That was another key thing. Brian had to trust me because, and we didn't even announce that I was joining the company until 5 months after I'd been there, because there was a worry Brian had that he was much younger than me, had no business background at all. And the moment people found out that the founder and CEO of the second largest boutique hotel company was coming in this company, everybody would think, oh, well, Chip's going to be the CEO. Brian didn't want me to be the CEO, and I didn't want to be the CEO. But we had to build a close enough rapport such that when 5 months into it, when we did announce that I was in the company, all of the rumors about me coming in and taking over, Brian and I could laugh at those and say, like, that's not it, because we had built enough of a rapport that, all of the rumors were going to, like, go nowhere. But let me also say, I had to right size my ego to know I was no longer the sage on the stage, meaning the person getting all the attention. I was the guide on the side. My job was to help Brian to be the best CEO possible. And I'm very proud that 4.5 years after the company went public and became the most valuable hospitality company in the world, Brian is still the CEO, which is really remarkable considering he has no business background. He's the only Fortune 500 CEO who has a creative background. So he's a cultural creative, a designer. Um, so that my sense of accomplishment comes from the fact that I helped him be successful, as opposed to back in the day when I ran my own company. Oh, my sense of accomplishment was what nice things people are saying about me in the media. Now, not to say I didn't get some media, but most of it was for Brian, and that's the way it was supposed to be.
I mean, it kind of nicely leads on to something I wanted to discuss or ask you as well, in terms of, you talk about purpose beyond, professional success.
Mhm.
Um, so how can individuals, right, that get into midlife rediscover or redefine their sense of purpose?
Yeah. So I think there are first of all, there's a bunch of thoughts on purpose. We tend to, in the United States, I don't know if this is true in Europe, um, we get very obsessed with purpose and as a possession. It's like, oh my God, everybody else has a purpose and I don't have one, as if it's a BMW in your driveway. So there's a sense of like, oh, I have purpose performance anxiety because people have a purpose and I don't. That's not helpful. Purpose, in my opinion, purpose is less of a noun and more of an action. Is to be purposeful. What would make you feel purposeful? And you need to also distinguish between a big P purpose, which is the kind of thing you'd have on a LinkedIn profile, and a small P purpose, which is the smaller things in your life that people may talk about at your eulogy. So it's resume versus eulogy. Big P purpose is resume. Small P purpose is the smaller things, but they're things that you feel purposeful about, whether it's being a good parent, whether it's loving your dog, whether it's being a political activist, whether it's getting a dog park built at your local community neighborhood garden or park. So that's another thing to know. And then I think there are 4 pathways to purpose, and this is really getting to your question. Number 1 is something that excites you. That's sort of obvious. Number 2 is something that agitates you. Reed Hastings started Netflix because he was returning 3 DVDs over the Christmas holiday to Blockbuster Video, and they were gonna charge him $60 late fees. And he said, like, "That's ridiculous." And then, they said, "Well, it's 3 weeks late, and that's what our fees are." And on the way to the gym, after he delivered the DVDs, he thought about, like, I go to the gym as much as I want during the month, I can go 1 time or 30 times in the month, and they charge me the same either way. Why couldn't I have, like, an entertainment experience, where they send me 3 DVDs and I can hold them as long or as short as I want, and there's no late fees. So that's how Netflix came about, because of his agitation. So the first is the excitement, second is agitation, third is curious. Some of the most interesting things, Velcro got created because of curiosity. There's so many inventions that have been made based upon the inventor, us being often a scientist trying to do one thing, and that led to something else, a different outcome. That's how Viagra got created. Um, for middle-aged men, that's a very important one. And uh, so curiosity is helpful. And then the fourth one, which is the one that I really love, is s something neglected from earlier in your life that you were passionate about, that you've had to neglect, that you don't you no longer have given attention to, but you still have passion around. So we had a woman come as a litigator to a cultivating purpose workshop at an MEA. She was 60 years old and she wanted to work another 10 years, but she hated litigation. She hated being a lawyer. She hated arguing in court. By the end of the week, she came to realize that, oh man, when I was a kid, I loved cooking pies with my grandma in her kitchen. And what if I went to pastry chef school? I just try it out, and I'll do that while I'm a lawyer to see how that goes. She did that for 3 months. She loved it, and so she decided she was gonna leave being a lawyer and instead being a baker and an entrepreneur creating a bakery company, and she did that during COVID, and she's been very successful. So, um, sometimes the thing that is your purpose is not obvious and adjacent. Most times it is obvious and adjacent. For me to go to work at Airbnb was sort of obvious, but not that obvious. It's a tech company. I'm not a tech person. On the other hand, it's a hospitality company too. And Brian really wanted to up the ante of the hospitality. And so, yeah, in some ways it made sense, but it was not exactly the obvious thing, after. So sometimes it's adjacent, but not that close. And that's why a program like MEA is really helpful, because it helps you to see you have more options. There are purposeful options than you thought you had. And that's why our Cultivating Purpose online course is really, really popular.
I mean, it's probably not a massively different question, but I mean, sort of something that, well, a conversation that I had at the weekend with a friend, and it is kind of this thing of he's like, well, if I don't change jobs now, in 5 years' time, I could sort of be at that cusp of I'm not employable because I'm too old, and I mean, my wife has worked for the same company for the last 20 years, and there's sort of, you get to a point where there's a real fear that, you know, what if I had to get another job, or so I mean, do you have any advice if someone
Yeah.
has to change career at that stage in life, and is it the right time to go, right, well, I might as well do something completely different? I mean,
Well,
obviously, finances are always going to play a key part.
they absolutely will. And I think you don't want to make a, a, a very important decision like that at a time where there's enormous risk involved. So yes, if involuntarily you get sacked and you're made redundant and you don't have a job, then you have to figure it out. But actually making the choice to make a major career move at a time when you have 3 kids at home and, you have ailing parents who need some money from you, and, I mean, that's not the best time. That's the time to be safe and secure. On the other hand, being safe and secure, doing things that you don't like for a long time can lead you to depression and lead you to a place where you just really don't feel like this is your own life. So so there's not a simple answer here. There's a lot. Every person has different set of variables. But what I will say is that when someone is in that state where they're realizing, I do need to change my career, the there's lots of different variables, but the number one variable is who do you know and what are they doing? And do they love what they're doing? And might you work with them in some way? Is there a way for you to be supportive of somebody who's already successful, that's already in your network, or most often one person removed from your network? The data on this is really conclusive that it's the second set of persons, not the person you know, it's the person who knows someone they can introduce you to. And that's why LinkedIn or networking or just staying in touch with friends is really important, because they may have somebody who has a need and you may be able to fit their need. Um, Starting your own business is I love entrepreneurship and I love working with entrepreneurs, and I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs, but it's also, it's rare that in the first year or two of a new business, you will make as much money as you were making before. In fact, you may lose money. And so that's, to my mind, an even riskier path than trying to find another job in a new area or a new company or a new industry. So it's even more risky to say like, okay, I don't have any salary. Um, Having said that, I do think that what thing that's very interesting in the US is the fastest growing set of entrepreneurs in the US are not people in their 20s, it's people in their 50s. It's the fastest growing. And why? Why? And they're more than twice as likely to be successful as someone in their 20s, because in many cases that's their major option, because in their 50s, they wanna keep working. They're tired of working for somebody else, but also they're at a stage where they really don't think they have a lot of options of how they can get a job that's gonna pay them as well as they're currently being paid. So it's a dream, and the US is generally an entrepreneurial culture, and so it may be more so in the US than in other places. Um, and there's all kinds of businesses you can start. You can, like, you could be owning a pub. I'd love to have a pub. I love it. I have 2 pub names. If I were to live in the UK, I studied in the UK when I was in college for a semester. So I would have a women's pub that women love called the Feisty Crone. Um, um, and then I would have a men's pub. What was it called? Oh my God. It's I'll tell you in 1 second. The men's pub
You've
would be
obviously
called,
you've given it a lot of thought and written it down.
oh, I've written it down even. We got the Feisty Crone. Oh, and then we have the Hot Monk Tavern. The Hot Monk Tavern.
I like
Um,
that.
so like Hot Monk. Okay, I'm just the Hot Monk, So yeah, I'd love to own a pub.
We might have to make that a new question, like
It-
for every guest. Is like you've got to have 2 pubs, one for men, one for women. What are you going to call them?
yeah, I like that. Chip, we slowly need to come to an end, but one last question for those feeling stuck or fearful of aging, right? And a lot of people that listen to the podcast will be. What would this one piece of advice be for you to offer to someone to give them a positive outlook about, don't be afraid of aging, basically?
Well, read my book, Learning to Love Midlife. That'll help. But what I'd
Yeah.
say beyond that is there are a lot of playing fields you can look at your life on. There's the physical playing field, which is our beauty, our brawn, our just what we look like, and that doesn't get better with age for most people.
Yeah.
But the relational playing field gets better with age. The intellectual playing field and the ability to actually make good decisions and be wise gets better with age. Our emotional playing field, in terms of our emotional intelligence, grows as we get older. That gets better with age. Our spiritual playing field we play on actually gets better with age because people get more curious about the meaning of life after 50. So what I would just say is that the most obvious way that we age is physically. And it's the way that most people think about, it's the exclusive way most people think about aging. But there's all kinds of ways that life can get better as you get older, and you can be better as you get older, and maybe even have more value. It's not about being youthful, it's about being useful. And so the real question to ask yourself as you get older is, how can you be more useful?
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, unfortunately we have come to the end. I mean, we'll obviously put everything in the show notes, but if people want to find out more about you and about the Modern Elder Academy,
Yeah, they can. My website's Chip Conley, CONLEY.com, and then the Modern Elder Academy website's MEAwisdom.com. I have a daily blog that you can find on either of those. It's the same blog. And I post my daily blog posts on LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see my daily blog, which if what I've talked about today is interesting, it's free. If you want to subscribe to the Bit Daily blog, we email it to you and it's free.
brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Chip. It's been
Yeah,
an
thank you.
incredible conversation. Really appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you. That was
guys.
great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Feel free to reach out to Volker or David via our website, www.manupdown.com, or podcast@manupdown.com, with any feedback or to let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Hear you again soon.